Welcome to Debt Matters. Um, I want you to picture a 146-year-old brand,
Okay.
like a true staple of the British high street. We're talking a company trading since 1880.
Mhm.
When you walk past their shop windows, it just feels permanent, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It feels like an institution that has simply always been there and
Yeah.
always will be. But then, almost out of nowhere, it collapses, leaving behind 59.3 million pounds in debt.
Yeah, that public image of permanence is exactly what makes the sudden shuttering of stores so jarring for people.
Right.
But the reality is the timeline from operational distress to outright insolvency is usually far shorter than anyone on the outside realizes.
Which is exactly our mission today.
Mm.
We are unpacking the reality behind the collapse of the footwear brand Russell and Bromley.
Hmm.
We really want to look at what actually happens when falling demand, high fixed costs, tax arrears, and supplier exposure all just collide. We're exploring the harsh realities of UK creditor risk when a household name fails.
And, you know, there are basically two completely different realities running parallel when a major retail insolvency like this occurs.
How so?
Well, the public just sees the shop closures, right? They see the to let signs in the windows. But creditors see a terrifying landscape of unpaid invoices, totally frozen accounts, and just completely uncertain recovery prospects.
Yeah, and we have to start with this illusion of legacy versus the actual reality of cash flow. Because there is this massive psychological trap we all fall into.
Oh, for sure.
We look at a brand that's been trading for nearly 15 decades, and we automatically equate old with safe.
Right. You assume survival equals financial invulnerability. I mean, if a company has weathered economic downturns, world wars, massive shifts in consumer behavior for over a century, the natural assumption is that their balance sheet is just bulletproof.
Exactly.
But administrators in this case pointed to weak demand, rising costs, and a remarkably high fixed cost base as the culprits.
It's like treating a legacy client like an old beloved car. You just assume it will start in the morning because it always has,
Yeah,
which makes you completely blind to the fact that the engine is actually rusting out from underneath.
that's a great way to put it. And the mechanical reality underneath a business is always cash flow.
Right.
A long-established customer can rapidly become a severe late payment risk because, well, their legacy reputation provides absolutely zero protection for that cash flow when sales and margins come under pressure.
Yeah, a century of brand awareness doesn't magically generate cash if your operational costs are eating you alive and foot traffic is dropping.
Exactly. And let's actually look at the mechanics of those fixed costs because older brands often carry really heavy, inflexible lease agreements.
Ah, yeah, the retail space.
Right. A 10-year lease on a prime high street location demands the exact same monthly payment regardless of whether you sell 1,000 pairs of shoes or like 10.
Wow.
Plus, you have business rates, utility standing charges, core payroll. When demand dips, those fixed costs do not budge. So the business has to start burning through whatever cash reserves they have to cover the spread.
And then once those reserves evaporate, they start leaning on their suppliers for liquidity, right?
Right.
By delaying payments.
Exactly. They essentially use their supply chain as an unauthorized overdraft facility.
Which brings us to the breaking point. The company hits the wall, and the headlines start talking about a rescue. Like, the news breaks that Next acquired the Russell and Bromley brand and certain assets.
Right. The classic rescue headline.
But wait, if a giant company like Next swoops in and buys the brand, shouldn't they be obligated to pay the outstanding bills? I mean, why do the suppliers get left holding the bag while Next just walks away with a shiny logo?
Yeah, it's a huge point of confusion. It really comes down to the fundamental difference between an asset acquisition and a share acquisition during an insolvency process.
Okay, break that down for us.
So, when a company is in administration, a buyer like Next isn't buying the corporate entity itself. They aren't buying the company that actually owes you money.
They're just picking the apples off the tree.
Exactly. They pluck out the valuable parts. They buy the intellectual property, the brand name, maybe the inventory, and the leases for only the most profitable stores.
Leaving the rest behind.
Yeah, the historic debts are left trapped inside the shell of the old insolvent company. The buyer gets a completely clean slate.
Wow. But what about the staff? Because we hear about 400 staff being made redundant here, since 33 stores and 9 concessions didn't transfer over.
Right.
If Next bought the business, shouldn't the employees be protected under employment transfer laws?
They are protected, but only if they're attached to the specific part of the business that was actually acquired.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so the transfer of undertakings regulations to UP ensure that if you buy a going concern, the employees transfer over with their existing terms and conditions. But if Next only acquires the brand IP and a handful of leases, they're only taking on the staff associated with those specific stores.
The rest are just left in the old shell.
Left in the shell, which now has 0 operations. So the administrators literally have no choice but to make them redundant, and then those redundancy claims become another layer of debt against the insolvent estate.
Further diluting whatever might be left for the suppliers.
Exactly.
So if the suppliers are staring at a hollowed-out shell, we really need to follow the debt to see exactly where that 59.3 million pounds is stuck.
Right.
Because once administration begins, you are dealing with an incredibly rigid hierarchy, aren't you? The moment administrators are appointed, ordinary debt recovery routes just stop.
Yeah, the statutory moratorium kicks in. That means you can't sue them, you can't send bailiffs. Everything freezes to allow the administrators to realize the remaining assets and distribute the funds according to the strict order of priority set out by UK insolvency law.
It's basically like hitting a sudden roadblock on the highway. If you are an ordinary unsecured creditor, say, like the company providing their cardboard shoeboxes, or maybe a local cleaning service, you are parked at the very back of the traffic jam. Meanwhile, the secured creditors and the tax authorities get a police escort right to the front of the line.
That's a perfect analogy. Let's break down who is actually getting that police escort and why.
Let's do it.
The report shows the business owed HMRC £3.2 million. It also had roughly £2.1 million drawn on a trade finance facility.
Okay.
That trade finance facility is a secured creditor holding a fixed or floating charge over the company's assets.
Wait, how does a floating charge actually work in practice? Like, why do they get to leapfrog the suppliers who actually provided the goods?
So a floating charge basically hovers over a class of assets like inventory or cash in the bank. The lender provides capital on the explicit legal condition that if the business fails, that charge attaches to those assets.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they get paid first from the realization of those specific assets. The trade suppliers, unless they have very specific, legally watertight clauses in their contracts, they just don't have that security.
But wait, why does HMRC get to jump the queue? If a supplier delivered actual goods that the business sold, shouldn't they be paid before the taxman?
You'd think so from an equity standpoint, but the government restored crown preference a few years back.
What does that mean?
Well, the logic is that when a business collects VAT from a customer, or they deduct payee from their employees' paychecks, that money never actually belonged to the business.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they were just holding it in trust for the exchequer.
So the government is basically saying, you didn't pay us our money, you kept our money to fund your operations.
Exactly that mechanism. And because of that, HMRC gets to step in front of ordinary trade creditors. They are preferential creditors.
Right. So how do the administrators themselves fit into all this? Because they certainly aren't working for free.
Far from it. The costs and expenses of the administration, which includes the administrator's often huge hourly fees, legal costs, valuation fees, those are all paid out of the asset realizations before either the preferential or unsecured creditors get their share.
Wow.
So after the secured creditors take their cut, after the administrators pay their fees, and after HMRC takes its preferential share, whatever tiny pool of money is left over is distributed proportionally among the unsecured creditors.
Which means the folks at the back of the line just have to submit their claims and basically pray.
Pretty much.
So if a customer relies heavily on funding facilities, or if you catch wind they have high tax liabilities, that tells you the queue in front of you is already incredibly long.
Right. And your chances of recovering your money in an insolvency scenario are practically zero.
And this goes way beyond just a shoe store closing.
Oh, yeah.
The collapse hits logistics providers moving the shoes. It hits marketing agencies, landlords owning the high street properties, the maintenance firms fixing the lighting in the shops. Everyone is suddenly waiting to understand what they can recover.
It creates a localized cascading impact. The maintenance firm doesn't get paid for their work, which means they might struggle to pay their own tool suppliers. The impact just cascades right down the supply chain.
So spotting the red flags early is literally the only way to protect your business from getting dragged into that same financial black hole.
Absolutely. And we hear about the classic indicators all the time, right? Slower replies to emails, partial payments instead of clearing the full invoice, constant promise to pay dates getting pushed back, changing order patterns, or requesting extended payment terms.
But wait, why are changing order patterns an automatic red flag? Couldn't they just be adjusting to, like, seasonal demand or a new inventory strategy?
It could, but you really have to look at the specific nature of the change. Like, if a client historically orders in bulk quarterly to take advantage of volume discounts, and then suddenly shifts to small weekly orders at a higher unit price, they're basically telling you they no longer have the cash reserves to buy in bulk.
Ah, that makes sense.
Yeah, they are managing their cash flow week to week. The cost of goods actually goes up for them, but they simply don't have the liquidity to do it any other way.
But how is a business owner supposed to distinguish between a client going through a normal temporary rough patch and one in terminal decline? I mean, a single late payment doesn't scream total collapse.
It is the cumulative effect.
Right.
A single late payment is just a data point. A late payment combined with a request to extend terms from 30 to 60 days, followed by the accounts payable contact suddenly becoming unresponsive.
Well, that is a pattern.
And the accounts payable silence is always the most telling sign.
Oh, always. Just think about the psychology of an accounts payable department in a failing business.
That must be awful. It is. They're being told by the finance director to hold all outbound payments. They are fielding dozens of calls a day from angry suppliers, and they have absolutely no good news to share, so they just stop answering the phone.
Yeah.
You cannot wait for the crisis to go public, because by the time a notice of intention to appoint administrators is filed, your leverage is totally gone.
I want to go back to the warning signs for a second. You mentioned restructuring rumors earlier, but by the time it's in the press, isn't it already too late?
Often, yes.
Oh.
Which is why you need to look for the internal micro signals before the macro signals hit the news.
Like what?
Well, another major red flag is high staff turnover in their finance department. If their finance director or key credit controller suddenly leave, that is a glaring warning sign.
Because they see the writing on the wall and they're jumping ship.
Exactly. They know the cash flow reality better than anyone. If the people managing the money are leaving, you need to tighten your credit terms immediately.
So if the leverage is gone by the time it's public, then the only way to survive is to build your defenses while the sun is still shining.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that without alienating your clients?
You establish a rigorous, completely unemotional credit control process. It has to be institutionalized so it doesn't feel like a personal attack on the client.
It's like building a fire break in a forest before the dry season.
Yes.
You clear the brush and dig the trenches early. You don't just sit around hoping you have enough water when a wildfire actually starts tearing through the trees.
A robust credit control process is your fire break, and it starts long before the invoice is even issued. Consistently credit checking your larger customers and doing it regularly, not just once when you first onboard them. Setting sensible credit limits and actually sticking to them, even if the client pushes back.
Because the sales team always wants to push the limit higher to close the deal, right?
Always. The conflict between sales and credit control is as old as business itself. But letting a client double their credit limit just because they've been around for a century is exactly how you end up at the back of the creditor line.
Right.
You also need to confirm all payment terms in writing. Ambiguity is the absolute enemy of debt recovery. Keep meticulous evidence of delivery for your goods or services.
What if you supplied physical goods? Can't you just go back and collect the cardboard boxes or the shoes if you haven't been paid?
Only if you have a properly drafted and legally enforceable retention of title clause in your terms and conditions.
Ah.
And honestly, even then, enforcing it once an administrator is appointed is incredibly difficult. You have to prove those specific boxes belong to you and haven't been mixed with others or sold. A clear paper trail is really your only defense.
So what about when the payment is actually late?
Escalate before the debt ages. Chase early. The statistical reality of debt recovery is that the older an invoice gets, the harder it is to recover. If a customer does enter administration, seek immediate professional advice. Do not assume the administrators will just figure it out and send you a check.
You really have to actively fight for your place in that very long line and make sure your paperwork is bulletproof.
Exactly. But the overarching goal of the fire break is to limit your exposure beforehand so that if you do end up in that line, the amount you lose doesn't threaten your own survival.
To summarize what we've unpacked today, a prestigious history and a famous name on a storefront are absolutely no substitute for strong, daily credit control. Legacy doesn't equal liquidity.
Definitely not.
Rescue deals often rescue the brand while shedding the corporate liabilities. And once administration hits, the unsecured suppliers are left hoping for a trickle from a very dry tap.
Process must always override assumptions. The mechanics of cash flow really don't care how famous a client is.
So true.
Think about the oldest, most reliable legacy client on your books right now. If their communication suddenly slowed down and they asked for longer payment terms tomorrow, would you have the courage to put them on a credit hold? Or would their famous reputation blind you to your own risk?
That is a harsh but necessary question to ask yourself. Thank you for joining us for this look at the hidden mechanics of creditor risk. Keep a close eye on those invoices, trust your processes, and we will catch you next time.